Okay, and back, as I said, that last video is uploading now, so we're back in here. Now, I got onto a very big set of tangents there and was basically running around playing the game and then just idling in various areas, doing more of a vlog than a moving analysis of the game. But again, as I kind of say constantly, the idea is that you kind of get an experience of me, kind of get an experience of Halo, and we're both kind of reflecting and refracting through each other, me and the game. It's, whenever you're watching a Let's Play or whatever, where does the subject end and the whatever I am presenter begin? It's really a bit of both of us, and there's no real way around that. Even if I weren't speaking, you would still be getting a bit of me and how I choose to engage with all of this space. It's a different experience no matter who's touching it. There's a lot I could say there, but that's not what I want to go into. I just want to say, sorry I get distracted sometimes, and I would like to at least talk a little bit about this room we're in. I like to do that a lot. Let me just make sure I'm recording. Of course I am, I'm just paranoid as always. Sorry, I gotta try to open my throat up again a bit. Don't want to tire myself out here, so where were we? We fought our way into this hangar, which is actually a very cool room to fight in. On normal, I don't have to think too much, but it's still quite cool. You saw like Marines fighting up with the aliens who were up there. I have this really cool gun with me still. We're back in another area, which is a kind of enclosed canyon with high walls limiting us in every direction, except for another cutaway. Where inside it would be justified to just have us shoved in boxes for the next half hour, but they still did this giant open cutaway in the level just because they love this visual so much. And I don't blame them for like an easy way to add scale and just remind us that this isn't a half-assed game. It's a very cool idea to just shove this right here. And something cool that I didn't end up showing you, maybe I should have let these guys all buy it in the last few rooms. If you lose all your Marines by the time you get to this room, a transport pulls in from your side right here and just drops them right in the middle of the gunfight. And that is extremely cool in my opinion. I really love that in all the levels with these guys, they've set it up so that they can just do things like that, so you're never without them, even if they aren't that useful in a fight. But on the lower difficulties, I really think they are as well. That's another thing I like about them. The game always wants them to be around. It both sells the idea that this is a greater struggle and that, you're not fighting alone. This is a much bigger world than just Master Chief and his gun. So anyway, this room, as you can see, we've got one open door and one shut one, and look at this. It actually reflects bullets, which is awesome. Something I really love is when projectiles are actually a physical force in the world. It's not, what they call hit scan, where I just point my gun and then damage happens on whatever I'm aiming at. Like, no, the game actually models the flight of bullets, so things like this are possible. Also, what you may have noticed is, look, guns spin when shot. I love that. And as I've pointed out before, grenades are set off by other ones, but we don't need a demo right now. And the game scatters dead Marines, so it has an excuse to give you more ammunition at any given point in the game. I always liked, when I was a kid, I was so fascinated by how much riding there is in this game where there doesn't need to be. Get the sniper rifle and look at anything. They have the calibers of your different rounds. The sniper ones come in boxes of 16. The assault rifle ones come in these packets of M118 7.62 by 51 full metal jacket armor piercing. Isn't that just fantastic? That could have just been a box that said bullets or something, but Bungie is serious. This is science fiction, nothing half-assed here. And I don't think I've ever thought to try this. What do they look like if I update? Honestly, not bad. This is a detail it would be probably pretty hard to screw up, so they just did it exactly as presented. And yeah, it's a bit clearer. Unfortunately, our Marine buddy here does not look so good. The grenade is wearing armor for some reason. I don't know what that is. Okay, there's just a fragmentation. It's doesn't look too bulky to carry. It's not going to catch on your clothes or anything. It's just round and it's made to explode. And here's a future grenade. You can tell it's from the future because it looks like a gaming PC. That makes sense, doesn't it? And yeah, something that people were talking about when this one was up, again, people don't comment on YouTube, but they do everywhere else. The armor from this, we were comparing it to what was used in Halo Reach, and it's very weird. At the end of Reach, you meet the Marines from this game who look like this, but basically with slightly more detailed versions of their armor for the new graphical engine on the Xbox 360, and they look pretty good. Like, I can recognize they're meant to be these guys, and I don't feel upset. But then, rather than just ripping that asset and putting it in, they did this, and why? Why do Marines have bedrolls? They didn't have bedrolls at the end of Halo Reach when I saw them. This is a very, very silly game. I don't know if it was the Russian guys who made all these silly decisions, or if it was the American ones. I lean towards America. Okay, I really hate that they decided to light this up. Sorry, I said I didn't want to really fixate on these details in every room of the game, but you really can just see every time just ornamentation and crime. This is ornamentation and it is crime. We don't need to wait for them to commit the crime. They've already done it. Look at this. It used to be just ominous. The world extends beyond you at some point constantly throughout Halo. You get the sense that you're fighting in space. This is a space game, even if your feet are always on the ground. I really like that. And then, just look at this. Even just this, it's all well lit and crowding me in. We have the giant gamer PC, whatever that is, above us, rather than these ominous, vague lights. You know how I feel. They just want it all to feel very comfortably enclosed. It's the opposite design sensibility. If they could, they would have just put a giant wall here, I think. And of course, it's very light. There's a grate that leads to nothing for some reason. There's some kind of moving something behind there. Like here, it looks like, okay, that's their electrical wiring. I guess they remove those plates and get at it if they need to fix something. Now it's alive. Like, that's somebody's desktop screensaver. Like, someone moves the mouse and it gets back to like alien Windows screen in their desktop. They can fiddle with their files, but nobody's touched the mouse in 10 minutes, so it's defaulted to this so they don't get burn-in. Okay, enough of getting very, very mad about horrible design sense. Pardon me, I said I would open my throat, but I just don't instinctively speak too loudly, I'm afraid. Anyway, moving on, I had something on my mind. Will I get it back? I don't know. But there's a lot we can talk about, so that doesn't really matter. Maybe I'll actually play the game for a moment. So here's more of these silly little English-speaking grunts who suck and exist to die. And of course, if you study the game a bit, you learn that they're slave soldiers. Sucks to be them. This guy wants to do some fighting. Look at him go. And looking at them reminds me of the other thought I had. It's something I've brought up a few times just talking with friends but haven't really here, is the guns. Specifically, we were looking at interview quotes from Bungie and the new team, and the gun designer said something interesting, that he designed these before the FN2000 was announced, before he knew that existed. If you don't know, that's just a French fancy assault rifle, which basically it's designed with a very similar silhouette. And the idea was, the guy who designed this gun, he was saying like, people are just going to see that and think, oh, well, yeah, they just made an FN2000 in Halo. But like, no, they were very proud of it because in the first two Halos especially, they actually tried to think of themselves, okay, gun of the future, what does that look like? And so they were thinking, okay, what does a real gun need to work, and what are things that would be nice to have on a gun that we don't have right now? So when they were designing this, there was some real thought put into real-world detail, like how long would a gun like this need to be so that its bolt would have room to cycle and so on. And you can see if you look at it more from the side that it's kind of modular looking, like this computer which tells me how many bullets I have left in the gun. It's kind of a clipped-on sort of looking part above what looks like. If we were to remove this top part, it would be more of an efficient kind of bullpup looking gun, more like real things that you might recognize. Like, think of this thing's silhouette as maybe like that Australian assault rifle, only with a computer on top instead of a scope. I don't know if you saw that. That grenade got bounced into the air mid-flight by another one. The physics are extremely cool in this game, and something I actually want to play on YouTube and just show it off and talk about it because nobody else really has is Myth. The Bungie game I keep mentioning, which was made before this. Something I noticed when playing Myth that I loved was that same approach to a lot of things as Halo, and physics are a huge part of Myth, and it would just be way more fun to show you how that works than tell you, so I will one day. And there are decent videos of Myth on YouTube if you just want a quick look at how it works, and even a guy who did a kind of lore-focused playthrough of Myth, which is sort of interesting. Just, you know, it's a game that gets praised for its writing a lot, Myth, but when people say that, what they really mean is the kind of presentation. It's a cool looking game, but there's really not much raw information going on at that point in Bungie. The interesting detail behind that is that Bungie's kind of lit crew who really tied together their hard fiction aspirations with this game, I'm pretty sure they met at least a couple of those guys through playing Myth. Like, one of the key Halo team members, pardon me, was a guy who they actually met and recruited through playing Myth online. So Myth is cool, it has a nice tone, I would call it well realized, but in terms of like raw information, it's not Lord of the Rings, it's not super well thought out, it's not super elaborate. It's got cool little cutscenes and stuff, which I'll talk about a bit if I go into that. That's what people like about it. It brings to mind something that Top Drunky, I've mentioned him before, I might again now and then, what he said about Legacy of Kain, which is, he said basically what I think about it, which is that it's not that mind-blowing what's going on, especially after the first game. Like, people love the PlayStation 1 game, and it's very, doesn't have too much going on, and, yeah, people say that game has great writing, but there is one really great thing about Legacy of Kain, that game, I think that's the one it is. Yeah, I get the titles confused because that series has a bunch of absurd names. The Legacy of Kain game on the PlayStation 1, where you're the angel guy with the ripped off wings. What's really great in that is the voice acting, just the delivery and the conviction and the strength of character they put into it, and that one opening cutscene with all of its cool imagery and weird, mysterious stuff going on. All of that, all of the game's parts together do not make a whole that I would call well-written or well-realized, really, actually. It has a couple of really cool pieces that work really well, as I just said. It's got a very cool opening cutscene and some very good acting performances from a couple of the guys they brought in to do the voices. That's what Mr. Top Drunky says, and I do not disagree. It is a very kind of unevenly realized work. I do like it, but that's about where it's at, and that is about what I would say about Myth as well. Halo I can talk about a lot, loads of very interesting ideas driving it behind the scenes, lots of complex stuff going on within the finished work I'm playing right now. I can talk about it at enormous length. Myth, not so much. I'm a pretty talented talker, I think. I can pull a lot of airtime filler out of nothing, but I would not be able to talk about Myth as Myth for too long. I think it only has so much going on within it. It's still quite interesting as far as video games go, I like it a lot, but it's not Halo, it's not a top to bottom, extraordinarily rich piece of work. I would call this like the real upper level of games. I would call Myth quite good, I would say, something like that. It's cool, it's quite nice, I really like it and want to show it off. There are parts which can be, there is a lot to appreciate within it, and I would like to share that because I don't think a lot of what's great about it is well understood in other games or really has been articulated before, but, you know, again, it's very, it feels kind of primitive compared to this. And yes, I know that supposedly there is a lot of very nice lore in the even earlier Bungie games, but you know, call a lawyer and sue me, I never bothered to play Pathways into Darkness or Marathon. Maybe I can just read about them, I don't know. I played a bit of Marathon and liked it, but every level was basically built around borderline adventure game puzzles stuff, which I found really tedious, like they were trying to make me feel like I was getting better value because the game takes longer, just like, I don't want to look for switches and keys, I don't want to do switch puzzles, that stuff feels a bit offensive, frankly. But they have a few similar thematic fixations going on in that one as they do in this, and I did appreciate what little I saw, and I might go back to it, I don't know, but yeah, I'm sorry if I'm just sort of vlogging at this point rather than saying anything super interesting, but that's just a line of thought I was teasing out, and that's about the end of it. I like Bungie, I'd like to show off Myth, and I don't have too much to say about the things they made before Myth. And pardon me. Now, as I was saying, new line of thought, I haven't really spoken just in general about this ship that we're in these corridors. This is kind of the next major shift in scenery after that kind of alpine forest area we land in. You know, we go from human ship, forest, to that kind of desert cliff area to inside the alien ship, and again, the visual idea which is really conveyed through these two environments is the kind of loose idea that the aliens seem to have a weirdly, despite their high-tech, more primitive approach to aesthetics, where, again, ornamentation is everywhere. The human ship looks more practical, which is, again, kind of strange since, dry and lame as it might seem to say, like it really is just kind of a fact that things get simpler and more visibly purpose-oriented as a civilization becomes more advanced. There is not so much need for, lots of detail, which is maybe not so... People are not pleased by decoration and excessive detail so much as their situation gets more advanced, and again, as I was saying about the weapons before, it says two things, like on one hand, if things are simple, it means that they just appreciate the simple things which work, they don't need tattoos on a face, decorations on their boots, and so on. And on the other hand, it could just suggest that the Covenants can take their time with building their nice spaceships. It's all just the craftsmen kind of enjoying themselves as opposed to humanity, where it's very down the line, hard drill masters just getting these things done because a human ship is, a tool for survival, whereas the aliens are not in that kind of existential threat mode in this war. And you can read it both ways, and it's arguably valid, and I think that not only are both readings valid, I think they're both probably things which are actually intentional, that humanity simultaneously has this kind of more serious, mature, and sophisticated look to their technology, and things that they build look a bit more desperate and mean because, they have more to lose in this war. The aliens don't really give a damn, they are confident in their technology and their ridiculous religious faith, so they feel pretty sure like they've got us, they instinctively just like having nice things. Here is a visual quirk of the game which I thought I might show off at one point. When things fall on a slope or something like that, they stretch in a funny way. But anyway, yes, as I was saying, the visual motif I want to insist upon constantly because I think it's brilliantly realized and pretty much never brought up is, again, the aliens have this elaborate ornamentation on everything. Compare that to the gun I'm holding. Very harsh, very serious, very clean, does not need any of that frivolous excess. I'm sorry, I feel like my voice is getting... My throat, again, it's just tightening up. Maybe I should lift the mic, I don't know. Probably a few different things. I instinctively just don't want to speak too loud, as I've said. And we've rescued the captain. Here he was, the aliens were just holding him in there. Doesn't look worse for wear.
Lock and load your weapons. Let's be ready to move.
Something we'll be able to look at in a moment. They've actually programmed the game so that Marines can use more than just those simple rifles we were holding. They can use everything. Captain is talking about the ring we're on, it's called Halo. Having looked into the development of this game a fair bit, I can tell you that this scene, it's very exposition rich because there was basically meant to be a big cutscene between this and the next level where they would go through all of this, but they didn't have time. all of the Halo games were made on a very tight schedule, and yeah, what happened here was basically they started with a plan for like 40 levels that got narrowed down to 10 eventually, and you know, certain plots were very much compressed or cut, and this was meant to be a key moment with its own set piece in the story, and instead it's just put it in the middle of this level. We just need to drop the information somewhere so the story works.
That's bad news. If Halo is a weapon and the Covenant gain control,
Oh yeah, and this is where I forgot how much exposition is here. If Halo is a weapon, the Covenant might use it to kill us, yes. That's kind of the key point as well, that the aliens didn't know this ring was here until we accidentally found it first, so we're kind of neck and neck here, even though the aliens have a more elaborate understanding of what this ring is, but not necessarily a correct one. And how we happen to get to it of all places, something the aliens consider so important, that's kind of a deeper story issue which I could go into later. It's something which was pretty well thought out and never explicitly said but hinted at a fair bit, which is something I like. Bungie have always had a bit of that going on. I understand that Myth and their older games, Marathon and their older games were very much about that, and I probably would like that if they weren't such a pain to play. We'll see if I'll ever get around to that. Just, they enjoy kind of layering and alluding to things, and I find that a lot of fun, but again, that's why I'm kind of disappointed in the people who play these games. They'll go into, they'll tie themselves in knots trying to get all of the hard lore down. They'll know which caliber of ammunition this rifle I'm holding fires within the game's setting. They know the alien names for all of the different things, but how many of them really appreciate what was going on inside the heads of the people who created this? That's generally the problem I have with lore and lore culture and fandoms and communities and so on in their appreciation of things, where they basically become data addicts, like the worst kinds of historians for something which isn't even history. It didn't happen. Like, it's just data hoarding. You're building a mental wiki of the thing when, of course, what does it really mean to appreciate a work? I guess appreciate is just you getting value from it in whatever way you do. That's fine, I guess. I'm not going to tell you it's wrong, but I can very fairly say I find it very boring, if that's what you're about. Just, how do I put it exactly? If all there was to appreciate in Halo was a pile of made-up information, it would not be so interesting to me. How it really became interesting to me again as an adult is recognizing that I could pass the will of its creators through it. I'm kind of like an archaeologist here. Again, a kind of funny meta point to bring up with how archaeology is a kind of key idea within Halo, is that what is Halo when, it's been made and then the guys who made it don't talk about it too much anymore? It's kind of like a ruin in a sense, isn't it? It's this great thing that was left behind by people who came before, and we're all in this kind of struggle to understand what exactly was going on in their heads, how and why they made this. And the average Halo fan, to be frank, I don't think they have a very elaborate or good understanding of what this is or how it got there. As I believe I may have been saying in the last video, if this is a kind of archaeological pursuit and battle to be the kind of successors of this old, dead, cut-off tradition, I think that very much it's a case that in every case, the guys like this are the ones who seem to be winning. They just got the edge on us somehow, and, frankly, they're morons who are doing it wrong. Yes, that is what I believe, that most of the people who claim to like Halo do not do it right, and it's kind of a waste of time that they even bother. And yeah, you may have noticed the unfortunate guys who stayed back here while I got the captain. They both bought it. The invisible sword guys got to them, I guess. But now it's time for us to escape the alien spaceship. Don't worry, the captain says he's got a plan. So I'm just going to wrap up this video, I guess, and probably not do more tonight. It's getting a bit late. Here we are in this place, fight these guys off, and time to break out of here. Is it about to go? Maybe if I shoot him. Yes, let's go. One more. There we go, it was waiting for that. That's it, the dropship is loose. Everybody mount up, get on board, and we get one last little funny moment here. I may be talking over them a bit too much, I don't know, you can always play it yourself. I would greatly appreciate it if you did, and if you haven't before. I do think this is a game everyone should play. It's gaming history, not just for... There we go, we rhymed them. I might actually start the next level and just talk for a moment on it just to get this last couple of thoughts I have out. Or I could just talk now, I don't know. This game is gaming history, and not just for incidental reasons. Basically, I think most games which are famous, it's kind of arbitrary. Gamers are stupid. Some journalists who aren't complete morons, you know, they set the scores, and, you know, even among a lot of normal people, a bit of instinctive, decent taste comes out. And how much correlation is there between games which are famous and considered classics and what is actually good, in my opinion? There's a bit of a connection there, but not a greatly strong one. A lot of my favorite games of all time, which I really just adore to death, are considered genuinely terrible by a lot of people, and a lot of games which are considered outstanding by most people I consider absolutely awful. But yeah, you've probably figured just from listening to me talk for this long that I have a lot of opinions like that. And this is a cool start of a level sequence here. I might actually let this play out, then stop, and then start this level again from the start and just run through it again because I think it's so interesting next video. This is probably the most, you know, interaction you get between the Marines and the aliens in the whole game. This beach sequence where there's about 10 of them against all these lines of aliens, and on normal they will pretty comfortably clear this up, and it's a very good example of just how well these guys work in action. Again, the way they're programmed, they hop between nodes, but if I didn't tell you that, would you have noticed? It's a very good system. And just by watching this play out, you can really appreciate that, as I keep saying, Halo was an RTS at one point. This game was made to be played from a bird's eye perspective, and these guys would be somewhat autonomous, taking orders from you. And yeah, just look at them go. They're able to function relatively independently. And I imagine that if the game were the RTS it was going to be at one point, the way it works now, the nodes are set by the level designers, and they just kind of move based on triggers that happen as I move to certain spots instead. You know, how it would work as an RTS, I imagine would be, I would just be the one placing nodes, and then they would behave as they do now, just with me telling them which spot to move to next. And yeah, look at them go. I don't even know if they've lost anybody yet. They've been dodging grenades, they've been backing each other up and moving as a group, and area secure. Good job. So yeah, how many guys did it give us? I know it changes based on the difficulty you pick. On normal, we got something like 8 or 9, which I think is quite cool. And then this is another Warthog level, but we won't play it right now. I'll leave you off with one last thing to contemplate. Yeah, contemplate that on the Tree of Woe, perhaps. Oh dear. Yep, again, just last thought on my mind. Just a giant stretch into lonely nothingness in the old look. And don't worry, there is no such thing as a true horizon in 343 verse. You get mountains, you get islands nearby. Everything is very close, don't worry. Scale does not exist. Well, I'm going to start this level again next time, as I said, or I might actually redo level 1 before that. We'll see what I feel like doing. Thank you again for watching. I think